Hey guys, you are back again for another story with us, and I'm so glad that you can still join us. I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying it and listening up real good. So let's open up our ears, let's open up our eyes so we can see what's happening, and let's open up our hearts so we can listen to what God or what Jesus has to tell us today. The desert is a dangerous place. Not many people go into the desert. You see, during the day, the sun beats down hard on the desert, and so it gets so hot. And at night, it gets so cold because now the sun have gone away. There's not a lot of shade or even things that grow in the desert. So there's no food, there's no water. And you see, when the wind blows, it changes the shape of the desert. And so the desert never looks the same twice. So people get lost in the desert. People get no food or water in the desert. But sometime after Abram and Sarah, their people had grown in number. There were quite a lot of them. And you see, they were now in a place where there was not any food or any water. The crops that they once had was not able to live anymore because there was no food, there was no water to feed the crops, and even some of the animals had nothing to eat or to drink. And so without any food, without any water, the people of God decided to move on. They decided to seek out a new land. They wanted to find a place where they could have food and water and everything that they needed to provide for their families. And so they started their journey out into the desert to look for a new place to live. It was quite tough on them. During the day, they would try to find some sort of shade to get out of the heat. And at night, they tried to wear as much clothing as they could so they could keep warm. And soon they came to a place called Egypt. This place was rather big, and there was someone there called Pharaoh. And this Pharaoh seemed to be quite a nice person. He gave them food and water and shelter. But you see, after some time, a new Pharaoh came into power. And this Pharaoh did not like these people all too much. He did not like the people of God, because after years they were growing in number and becoming more and many of them. And so he then decided to trap them. He kept them in Egypt. And soon the people of God became something called slaves. You see, the Pharaoh would separate them, so even the families sometimes would not be together. The Pharaoh would tell them when to eat, he would tell them when to sleep, when to get up, and also what they had to do for work. And without getting much out of it, they were even treated so badly, and things just got even worse now that they were with the Pharaoh. Many years had passed, and there was one particular person whose name was Moses. And his story is a wonderful story. But his story, where we are going to start from, is where he went up to the Pharaoh. He went to the Pharaoh because he did not like the way he was treating his people. And so he went to go and talk to the Pharaoh, and he said, "Let my people go." But the Pharaoh said no. But Moses didn't give up. A few times he went back, and he came back to the Pharaoh and he said, "Let my people go." And the Pharaoh again would say no. And the Pharaoh did this so many times. And each time the Pharaoh said no, God would send a plague onto Egypt. There'd be all sorts of weird things, like little insects that would come and eat all the crops, or even the huge Nile River that ran into Egypt had been filled with blood. There were all sorts of things that happened, and eventually The Pharaoh said, "Fine, just take your people and leave. Take all that you got and get out of my land." And so the people did just that. Moses went back and told them, and they didn't even have time to make bread or even food for their journey. And so they took with them what they had. They packed up as quickly as they could, and they went as quickly as they could to try and leave Egypt. They were heading in the direction of a gigantic sea that they had to cross. You see, as soon as they came close, they saw what was now in front of them. And they started to complain, saying, "Well, Moses has led us to our death. We can't cross this. How are we ever going to cross this?" And it was at this point they saw a huge cloud of smoke or of dust coming from behind them. It was the Egyptians. They were coming on their chariots. The Pharaoh was coming to take them back into Egypt so they could be slaves once more. But God came close to Moses, and Moses felt so close with God that he knew what he had to do. And so Moses took his staff and raised it up, and the waters that were in front of them opened up. Amazingly, this huge miracle happened before the people of God. And now they were able to pass through the waters on dry land with their animals and all sorts of different things that they had packed with them. Some were a bit nervous and didn't want to really cross at first. Others were quite excited, and so they went across rather quickly. I suppose some of them were so happy to leave that they even probably maybe did some cartwheels across. But everyone eventually made it across, even those who were scared and who were nervous. You see, the Egyptians were coming with their chariots and their horses to take back the people of God. But as soon as Moses took his staff and let it go down, the waters closed onto the Egyptians. So with the Egyptians now crushed in the sea, the people were saved. God was sending them to a promised land that he was going to give them. They were so happy that they actually started to sing and dance. And this was probably one of the first times they ever started singing and praising God in some sort of worship. And there was a lady named Miriam who started all of these dances with the people of God. And so this was the start of the great story of how God had rescued them from the evil Pharaoh and how they were now on their new journey to the promised land. So I wonder what part of this story was your favorite part? I wonder which part of the story you liked the best. Or maybe which one do you think was the most important?